Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made a little switch, as you have seen, because we are running a little bit behind the time. But I must say it's my pleasure to be here because the European Union is standing very firmly with all the goals of sustainable development. The European Union has been engaged in that process for years. We have pushed very hard the Paris process. We have pushed Copenhagen, which at the time was not so successful. We have pushed for Paris. And I think we are now in the position that we are the major player, I would say, worldwide, who continues to push for sustainable development. And this is one of the rare occasions, I can say, where I can confirm that all member states of the European Union, all 28 member states, are firmly behind these goals. And I'm very glad that the government of Korea has taken this initiative to start the implementation, to present the Korean goals to a large forum. I think, as it was mentioned already today, this is a process which needs very much the control and the support of civil society, because these are largely political commitments. And you have to watch that these political commitments are actually implemented. And I think this gives a very specific role to the interested public, or what we like to call civil society or stakeholders. But these are not abstract peoples, that's you. And I would therefore encourage very much that engagement. And I think everybody has to think very carefully what you can do personally in order to make the implementation of these goals. Because otherwise there will be many conferences with a lot of talk and with very little action. I was thinking, well, what good example could I give you? Well, at least I can tell you, I suspect I'm the only one who came to this conference with a 100% electric car. I think which is one step. I could have done even better in using public transport, I admit. But at least I was using, as my official car, an electric car. Ladies and gentlemen, I was asked to talk a little bit about the implementation process which the European Union is undertaking. First, and perhaps I should say that upfront, we are cooperating already now for some time with the government of Korea, and I'm very pleased that I see Minister Kim now more often. Only last Friday, they had organized a briefing for the diplomatic community on the plans of the government to implement the goals and the environmental policy. That is very welcome, and I think it opens the door for further cooperation. So we are doing that already with emission trading schemes. We are talking about green cities. We are talking about a low-carbon economy and society. We will launch a big project in the weeks to come to cooperate further with the government. We have launched very recently in the European Union a major initiative against plastic. We don't need all these damned plastic bags. I would encourage you, if you go shopping, bring your own bag from textile or paper and refuse to get another plastic bag. There's a very impressive movie where you can see which damage plastic is doing to the oceans. You can see what a fish can look like after having eaten all that plastic. And then imagine how you look like after having eaten that fish. So I think there are a few very concrete things which jump into our eyes, and if they are in our eyes, they should also be in our minds. And I encourage you to think also about these aspects. Now, in the European Union, we have started relatively early to think about, and what we normally do, we produce policy papers, because the way the European Union works for its 28 member states is we agree on policies, on goals, and then it is very much up to the member states actually to implement them. But what is important that in 2016, for example, the policy paper was called Next Steps for a Sustainable European Future. And it was mentioned several times today that this is a long-term project. We will not solve the problem today, not tomorrow, not next week, but it is a long-term project. And whenever it's a long-term project, you need long-term energy. And therefore, you need the agreement of the society that you stay with the process. It has to be different from what is called the CNN caravan, which is very much present at one moment at the time of a disaster, and the next day it's taken over by another one. That's not how we can solve the problem we have at hand. Therefore, this long-term element is extremely important. So 2030 agenda is something which is very close. Professor Kim, I think, explained very well that they thought, oh, writing a report, we have a lot of time. And whenever you are a little bit an academic, you know, time is running. You do a little bit of research, and then you are under terrible pressure. So writing a report under pressure is good, but working against 2030, it's only 12 years, and that's already very much short term. Now, what I would like to do, because we don't have too much time, I will concentrate on 6 priorities out of the agenda 2030, which we have given us. So the priority 1, a new boost for jobs, growth, and investment. Well, this is linked, as you can see, to many of the goals, but it is addressing key sustainable challenges which Europe faces. Since the global economic and financial crisis, the EU has been suffering from unemployment, investment gap, lack of competitiveness. And that's a problem, because then you are not using the resources in the way you should use them. It's ineffectiveness. And if you're ineffective economically, you are also ineffective in terms of the environment. So therefore, we also have to have that aspect, we have to concentrate on this aspect. We also have to see that we get rid of poverty and inequality. We have to do that first at home. We can, of course, talk about these problems on the global scale, but everybody has to do the homework at home. Therefore, the program is to have more jobs, more growth, and more investment, but in a sustainable manner. And I think that's the difference to the past. Not every investment is a good investment. And there we have to train our decision makers in order they take the right decisions. Now that the economy is picking up, it is of course easier to implement all that goals. But we have learned in the past for years, if the economy is not flourishing, then we have to resist that those goals on which we have agreed, the environmental goals, the sustainable goals, that they are cut first. But again, this is the job of civil society to make sure that this is not happening. Let me say a few words about the Resilient Energy Union with a forward-looking climate change policy. Well, the European Union is one of the largest importers of energy. So energy sustainability is one of the major issues which we have. You need energy, but you have to make sure that you have as much green energy and sustainably produced energy as possible. It doesn't make sense for a politician to say, I don't need energy. This is stupid. But you have to work towards renewable energies. And if you look there, the policy mix, then you will see there are a few countries, I may say including Korea, who could improve to bring up the renewable part in your energy policy mix. Deeper and fairer internal markets with a strengthened industrial basis. I think this is an aspect we have not discussed yet this morning. We also have the project, the Capital Markets Union, which is a new and forward-looking approach to ensure sustainable finance. Sustainable finance is high on the agenda now, also of the G20, which is meeting very soon in Argentina, and in Europe. Finance ministers, regulators, and industry are all actively looking at what can be done in light of the development goals, the Paris Agreement, and in the transition process to low-carbon, climate-resilient societies. Financing plays an important role. So if you finance in green projects, and if you exclude from your financing program non-sustainable projects, you can also have an impact. And that's an area which was not really thought about too much in the past, and I think this is something we have to work together. Therefore, it's good that it's taken up also by the G20, because it's very difficult if just one player is implementing a policy and all the others are just watching. So we have to try to work together as much as possible in the G20 and, of course, in the United Nations. A deeper and fairer economic and monetary union is part of the European pillar of social rights, and we also have to take actions in corporate social responsibility. This is linked with the investment which I have just mentioned. We have to see that social fairness remains at the heart of our policies. And we have to make sure that we take into account better economic, social, and demographic health and welfare trends. This is what we normally call, you have to streamline. Streamlining means you have to make sure that these principles are not confined just to the environment policy, where everybody thinks, oh, these green guys, they should take care of themselves. No, that's not the way it works anymore. If you streamline, then you have to make sure it's part of your development policy, of your transport policy, of your education policy, because you have to get in the minds of people. Priority 7, an area of justice and fundamental rights based on mutual trust. This includes efforts on justice and gender equality. The EU believes that effective justice systems play a crucial role in upholding the rule of law and its fundamental values. And therefore, the EU is encouraging our member states to improve the effectiveness of their national judicial systems and to promote further fundamental values of the EU, such as gender equality. We are all living now in the times of Me Too, and I think this is very much linked to gender equality, and it gives a lot of food for thought, not only in Korea, but actually worldwide. Furthermore, refugee crisis. Priority 8, towards a new policy on migration. This supports progress related to several of our goals, 1 and 10 in particular. The world is facing right now the highest number of refugees since the Second World War. We have 65 million people forcibly displaced worldwide. So therefore, we need a new migration policy. A new migration policy in Europe, in Africa, in Asia. And there we have to make sure that we work together for a noble cause, saving lives, preserving human dignity, and helping to support growth and reduce inequality. Last but not least, the EU seeks to ensure that everybody is able to access sufficient and affordable food. We all have to eat. That's our energy. Sometimes I'm amused when people talk about energy policy and tend to forget that the energy we take in every day is food. And even more important, and we had recently the International Water Day, it's water. You can make the experiment, how long you can live without drinking. It's a little bit longer, you don't need to eat 2 or 3 days. But drinking is a real problem. And not having access to drinking water is actually you're depriving somebody of a human right. And therefore, we have to make sure that we are working there together with international partners. The FAO is doing a very good job. But we also have this as an element in cooperation, in development with the Korean government. Ladies and gentlemen, I think what we all have to do is the long-term planning which I have mentioned. Therefore, we are producing another policy paper, but I think it could be an interesting one, towards sustainable Europe by 2030 and the future of Europe. I think if every country, every society puts itself into these shoes and says, I can only have a policy today which takes into account the goals of the next 10 to 15 years, I think then we will get into a policy-making mood, a gear, which is much more oriented in implementing all these policies. The 5 Ps, which you see here, people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership, have to be more than just a slogan. I could only in this short time give you a few hints, but my appeal to you is that we have to take the responsibility which we have as developed country very, very serious. And I think Korea here has a very high degree of credibility because you have developed extremely quickly from a recipient country to a donor country. But I think that brings also a responsibility, that you make use of this credibility, and I can assure you, you will have a partner in the European Union and its member states to help you in this endeavor. Thank you very much.